The airport was loud in a quiet way, a constant river of rolling suitcases, distant announcements and footsteps that never stopped moving even when the faces above them looked tired and empty. Adrian Vale preferred places like this because nobody noticed the important men here. Everyone was too busy chasing their own gates, their own delays, their own small emergencies. He sat in the VIP lounge behind a glass wall that made the rest of the world look like a screen, muted and far away. His suit was dark, his watch plain, his phone face down on the table beside black coffee. He had not touched. Two bodyguards stood a few steps behind him wearing neutral expressions built for blending in, but their eyes never stopped scanning. Adrian was not traveling for vacation, he was traveling because one meeting in another city could decide whether 3 ports stayed under his control or turned into someone else's territory. He did not like flying, but he liked control, and sometimes control required altitude. A man walked into the lounge carrying a laptop case and a smile too practiced. He nodded toward Adrian as if they were friends. Adrian did not return the nod. He only lifted his eyes long enough to remind the man that he was not welcome. The man hesitated, then moved away quickly. That was when Adrian felt a smaller presence behind him, something light like a shadow with shoes that barely made sound. He turned expecting a staff member, but instead he saw a little girl standing near his table. She was about 6, maybe 7, hair tangled, cheeks smudged like she had been crying and wiping her face with her sleeve. Her jacket was thin for this cold terminal, and the straps of a tiny pink backpack hung loose on her shoulders like she was wearing someone else's life. She stared at Adrian with wide eyes, not afraid the way most adults were, but curious, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Are you lost too, mister?" she asked. The question hit the lounge like a drop of ice in hot water because children did not talk to men like Adrian Vale, not unless they did not know what he was. His guard shifted immediately. One took a step forward, but Adrian lifted a hand without looking back, and the guard stopped. The girl did not flinch. She only tilted her head as if his silence was part of the answer. Adrian studied her calmly. "Where is your mother?" he asked. The girl hugged the straps of her backpack tighter. "I was holding her hand," she said, "and then people pushed and the big screen changed and she told me to wait and I waited and then she didn't come back." Adrian felt something flicker inside him, not sympathy exactly, more like irritation at the world for being careless, the way it always was with the small and weak. He glanced at the terminal beyond the glass wall. Families rushed by, couples argued over boarding passes, business travelers stared into phones. Nobody looked down at the child standing alone near a table meant for powerful men. "How long have you been alone?" Adrian asked. The girl shrugged. "I don't know, time is weird here." One of the guards finally spoke softly. "Sir, we should not get involved." Adrian did not look at him. He looked at the child. "What is your name?" She blinked like she was deciding if she should answer, then said, "Nora." Adrian nodded once. "Nora, where did you last see your mother?" She pointed toward the main concourse near the large flight display, the place where the crowd was thick like waves. Nora added, "And there was a man watching her like this." She leaned forward, narrowing her eyes, copying a stare, and Adrian felt his spine tighten because the child described it perfectly, the predatory attention of a man hunting for something, a man watching her. Adrian repeated, "What did he look like?" Nora thought hard, then said, "He wore a gray coat, and he had shiny shoes," and he kept smiling, but his smile looked broken, like it wanted to bite. Adrian did not like the description because it sounded like trouble, and trouble at an airport was messy, loud, public, the kind of mess he usually avoided. Adrian stood up slowly, his presence shifting the air around him. Nora stepped back half a step, but not because she feared him, more because she was surprised by how tall he was up close. "Stay here," Adrian said to the guards, then he paused and corrected himself. "No, bring her with us." The guards looked uneasy, but they obeyed because his voice was law. Adrian walked out of the lounge into the terminal with Nora and the 2 men behind him. People moved around them, instinctively creating space without knowing why. Nora walked close to Adrian like she had known him for years. Her small hand hovered near his sleeve, but she did not touch because she was not sure she was allowed. They reached the information desk. A tired employee looked up, ready to recite rehearsed politeness. Adrian leaned slightly toward the counter and spoke in a calm voice that carried authority. "We have a lost child. Her mother is missing. I need access to camera feeds near the main flight display." The employee blinked, shocked. "Sir, I can't do that. You need airport security." Adrian did not raise his voice. He simply slid a black card across the counter. The employee glanced at it, and his face changed instantly because the card was not a credit card. It was a private badge tied to powerful corporate partnerships and security privileges. The employee swallowed and nodded yes, sir, right away. Nora watched the exchange and whispered, "You are not lost." Adrian looked down at her and said, "Neither are you." Within minutes, an airport security officer arrived. 2 of them, actually, one with a radio and one with a tablet. They looked at Adrian with cautious respect, as if unsure whether to treat him as a passenger or as a problem. The older officer spoke, "We can check the cameras, sir, but we need details." The girl's name, her mother's name, flight information. Nora raised her hand like she was in school. "My mom's name is Layla," she said, and she was holding a blue folder, "and she told me we were going to see a new city." Adrian glanced at the officer. "Did you hear that?" Layla Blue Folder checked the area near the flight display and the restroom corridor adjacent to it. The officer nodded and signaled his partner. They walked quickly toward a back room. Nora stayed close to Adrian as they followed through a restricted door that made the terminal noise disappear behind them like a curtain. Inside, the security office monitors covered the walls, showing different angles of the terminal, timestamps ticking forward like nervous heartbeats. The officer pulled up footage near the flight display and rewound. Adrian watched silently. Nora climbed onto a chair beside him, eyes glued to the screen. The footage showed Layla holding Nora's hand exactly as Nora described. Blue folder under her arm, face pale, anxious. She looked over her shoulder again and again as if expecting someone to appear. Then the crowd shifted. Passengers surged toward a gate and Layla lost Nora for a second. She leaned down, said something urgent, then pointed toward a bench and walked away fast, not running, but moving with purpose like she was chasing time. Nora whispered, "That's me." That is when she said, "Wait." Adrian watched Layla move toward the restroom corridor. And then the screen angle changed and a man in a gray coat appeared in the background, keeping distance but matching her path step for step, shiny shoes catching the overhead lights like a signal. The man paused for a second and looked directly at the camera, then turned away, and Adrian felt cold certainty crawl through him because normal men avoided cameras. Predators did not care. Nora stiffened. "That's the Smile Man," she whispered. The officer frowned, zooming in, but the face remained partially hidden by the angle. "We can have someone locate him now," the officer said. Adrian leaned closer and said quietly, "Track Layla first." The footage showed Layla entering the restroom corridor, then vanishing from the camera view for a moment. The officer switched to a different camera angle covering the hallway better. The next view showed Layla stepping out of the restroom area a few minutes later, but something was wrong. Her posture was off. Her hand clutched the folder tight against her chest. Her face looked gray and she stumbled slightly like she was dizzy. The gray coat man closed in nearer, now pretending to check his phone as he followed her. Nora whispered, "Mom looks sick." Adrian narrowed his eyes. Layla reached a bench near a vending machine, sat down, suddenly head dropping forward like she could not hold herself up. The gray coat man stopped a few feet away, watching, not helping, not calling anyone, just watching like he was waiting for something to finish. Adrian turned to the officer. "Where is she now?" The officer spoke into his radio. "We need medical and patrol to vending machine corridor by gate 14 now. Possible collapse and suspicious male, gray coat, shiny shoes." Nora slid off the chair, panic rising. "My mom is alone." Adrian placed a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Look at me," he said. Nora bayed, eyes wide and wet. "We are going to her now. You will stay close and you will do exactly what I say." Nora nodded, hard swallowing fear. They moved fast through the restricted door back into the terminal. Adrian walked with speed that made people step aside unconsciously. The officers followed behind, radios crackling. Nora kept pace, small legs moving like she was running on pure will. As they reached gate 14, the crowd thickened again, but a clear path formed as security pushed through. Adrian saw Layla immediately slumped on the bench, blue folder on the floor at her feet, breathing shallow, her skin pale. Nora broke from Adrian and ran to her mom. "Mama," she cried, shaking her gently. Layla did not respond at first. Her eyes fluttered, then opened, slightly disoriented. Nora clung to her hand. "Mom, please don't sleep." Adrian looked around, searching for the gray coat man, and saw him at the edge of the crowd, already moving away, too calmly, too smoothly, pretending he was just another traveler. Adrian nodded once to one of his guards, and the guard melted into the crowd like smoke. The airport medic arrived quickly, kneeling beside Layla, asking questions. Layla tried to speak, but her voice was weak, her eyes unfocused. Nora looked up at Adrian through tears. "He did this," she whispered. "The Smile Man." Adrian kept his voice calm for her sake, but his eyes were cold. "I know." The medic lifted Layla's wrist, checked her pulse, asked if she had eaten, if she had medical conditions. Layla shook her head slightly, trying to speak, but her throat seemed tight. Nora answered for her. "She didn't eat." She was scared. She kept looking behind her. She said, "We have to go fast." Adrian looked at the blue folder on the floor. He picked it up carefully without opening it and handed it to the medic, then said softly, "She needs water and glucose now, and keep her seated until stable." The medic nodded and signaled for a wheelchair. Nora held her mother's hand, sobbing quietly. Layla finally turned her eyes toward Adrian, confused, fearful. "Who are you?" she whispered. Adrian leaned slightly closer so his words would not carry. "I am someone who does not like watching people hunt mothers in public." Layla tried to sit up but swayed. Nora tightened her grip. Adrian steadied the chair with one hand, then looked past the crowd toward the corridor where his guard had followed the gray coat man. A message buzzed on Adrian's phone, one short line from his guard. "He is not airport staff. He has a gun." Adrian felt the air change around him like thunder before a storm. He looked down at Nora, then at Layla, then back at the crowd, and understood in one sharp instant that this was not a simple lost child situation, and whatever Layla was running from had already found her at 30,000 feet above the ground in the safest place people believed existed. The wheelchair rolled fast through the terminal, escorted by security and a medic, while Adrian walked beside Nora, keeping one hand close enough to steady her if her legs failed her. Mother Layla drifted in and out of focus, breathing shallow, her fingers cold around Nora's small hand. Adrian Felt the weight of eyes on him, the kind that measure risk and opportunity. He scanned reflections in glass storefronts and polished floors, counting exits, mapping angles. The guard who tailed the gray coat man had gone quiet, which meant the situation had turned from observation to containment. Adrian spoke low to the medic. Take her to the VIP medical room, not the public clinic. The medic nodded, understanding without questions, because authority does not always wear uniforms. They turned down a restricted corridor, and the noise of the terminal softened behind them like a door closing on a storm. Nora looked up at Adrian, fear tight in her face. Are we in trouble? She asked. Adrian answered calmly, no, we are ahead of it. The words steadied her, even if she did not fully believe them. The VIP medical room was clean, private, guarded by 2 officers who recognized Adrian and stepped aside without asking names. Layla was transferred to a bed, monitors attached, gentle beeps filling the space. The medic administered fluids, glucose and oxygen. Layla color improved slightly, her eyes opening wider. She focused on Nora, then on Adrian, wary and confused. Who are you? She asked again. Adrian kept his distance. I am someone who can keep you safe right now. Layla tried to sit up, panic flaring. You don't know me. You don't know what he will do. Nora squeezed her hand. Mama, please. Adrian raised a hand slowly. I know enough, he said quietly. I know you were followed by a man with a gun, and I know he wanted you tired, alone, and quiet. Layla eyes widened, then dropped. She whispered, he said he was helping with paperwork. He said we needed to hurry. Adrian nodded. Paperwork is a good disguise. Marco Graves appeared at the door, breath controlled, eyes sharp. Boss, we have eyes on the subject. He ditched the gray coat near gate 16 carrying a backpack. We are shadowing. He is armed. Adrian nodded. Keep it clean, no panic. Marco nodded and vanished again. Adrian turned back to Layla. Your daughter asked me if I was lost. She found you before I did. Layla swallowed, tears forming. I tried to protect her. Adrian replied, you did, and now let me do the rest. Layla hesitated, then asked why. Adrian answered, because you were hunted in public and that breaks rules. Layla closed her eyes a moment, then opened them with resolve. I was running from my husband, she said, not loud, just firm. He is not my husband anymore. But he does not accept that. He wants me to sign papers. He wants Nora. I ran because the last time I said no, he put me in a hospital. Adrian felt a familiar cold anger settle. He asked, is he here? Layla nodded barely. I saw him near the board, smiling like nothing was wrong. Nora whispered, that's the smile man. Layla squeezed her hand. Yes, baby. Adrian absorbed the picture, a domestic predator using legality and persistence as weapons. He said, you will not sign anything today. Layla shook her head, frightened. He has lawyers, money, influence. Adrian answered, so do I. A soft knock, and an airport supervisor entered, hesitant. Sir, security reports the armed male is moving toward the medical corridor. Adrian cut him off. Lock the corridor quietly, reroute foot traffic now. The supervisor nodded and moved fast. Adrian looked at Nora. I need you to stay right here with your mom. Can you do that? Nora nodded hard. Adrian touched her shoulder once, then turned and left the room, his steps measured, not rushed, because speed invites mistakes. Outside, Marco waited with 2 men, plainclothes, weapons concealed. Boss, the subject is trying to blend near the restrooms. Backpack heavy. Adrian said, isolate and separate him from civilians. No sirens. Marco nodded and moved. The operation unfolded like choreography. Doors closed subtly, cleaning crews redirected. A security cart stalled in the right place. The gray coat man stepped into a pocket of quiet confusion where exits felt farther than they were. Marco approached him with calm authority. Sir, we need to check your bag. The man smiled thin, reached for a badge that was not valid and ran. Marco tackled him clean into padded wall, hands restrained, backpack seized, inside a compact pistol and forged documents, a name that changed with every page. The man hissed, you don't know who you are protecting. Marco answered, we do now. Adrian stepped into view. The man stiffened, recognizing the weight of him. Adrian spoke softly, you do not threaten mothers in airports. The man sneered, she belongs to me. Adrian replied, people do not belong to you. The man lunged once, rage breaking his mask. Marco pinned him. Adrian leaned close and said quietly, you will leave here in cuffs, and you will never approach them again. If you do, you will wish the airport cameras were the only eyes on you. The man spat threats that fell flat against the calm certainty in Adrian's voice. He turned to Marco, hand him to airport police with the weapon and the forgeries. File a restraining order expedited, and put eyes on his associates. Marco nodded, already moving back in the medical room. Layla watched the door with Nora's head on her chest. The fluids helped color returning. Adrian entered without drama. It is handled. Layla asked, shaking, is he gone? Adrian nodded, yes, and there will be a record this time. Layla exhaled a sob of relief. Nora peeked up. Is the smile man gone? Adrian said, yes, he is gone. Nora studied his face, then nodded satisfied. Layla gathered herself, then asked the question that mattered, what do you want? Adrian answered, nothing from you. Layla shook her head, men like you do not help for free. Adrian met her gaze, then call it a debt to your future, not to me. The medic cleared. Layla was stable, but should avoid flying today. Adrian said, arrangements are made, a hotel near the airport. Under my name, a doctor will check you again tonight. Layla protested, we can't afford. Adrian interrupted calmly, it is handled. Layla hesitated, pride battling fear. Nora squeezed her hand. Mama, please. Layla nodded, Thank you. They moved through a private exit to a waiting car, the city lights reflecting on wet pavement. Nora leaned against the window, exhausted, adrenaline fading. Adrian sat across from them, watching the night pass. He thought of the meeting he would miss, of the deal that would be delayed, of men who would grumble and adjust. He also thought of the rule he had broken, choosing people over schedule. The car stopped at a quiet hotel entrance. Security discreet. Layla was escorted inside. Nora looked back at Adrian. Will you be lost again? She asked. He almost smiled. He said no, and neither will you. Later, alone in the car, Marco asked, boss, we missed the window. Adrian answered, we made another. Marco nodded, accepting the shift. The phone buzzed with updates. The restraining order filed. The man detained. The paperwork moving. Adrian put the phone down and watched the river slide by, knowing the shock was not in the force used but in the choice made. He had stood in an airport and chosen to stop. He had let a small voice redirect a powerful day, and the city would feel that ripple whether it knew the cause or not. Morning came quietly, the kind that feels unreal after a night stretched thin by fear. Layla woke in the hotel room, sunlight slipping through the curtains. Nora slept curled beside her, breathing slow, and even Adrian sat in the armchair near the window, jacket folded, phone silent. For once he had not slept, but he was not tired. The city outside moved like a machine, resuming its rhythm, unaware of the small storm that had passed through an airport hours earlier. Layla stirred and noticed him watching the street. She tensed immediately, instinct flaring. Adrian turned calmly. Good morning, the doctor will be here shortly. Layla nodded cautiously. You stayed? Adrian answered. I said I would. Layla hesitated, then asked why me. Why her? Adrian considered, then replied, because the man who followed you did not act alone, and because walking away would invite him back. Layla sat up slowly, fear returning. You said he was handled? Adrian nodded. He was, but pressure like that rarely comes from one place. Layla closed her eyes, then opened them with resolve. I need to tell you something, Adrian said. I am listening. Layla explained in broken pieces how her ex-husband had leveraged contacts, filed false motions, stalked quietly, always within rules, until he bent them. He wanted custody, to hurt her, control her. Nora listened silently, absorbing words too big for her age. Adrian listened without interrupting, mapping names, timelines, power lines. Layla finished whispering, I thought airports were safe. Adrian answered, nothing is safe, only managed. A knock came. The doctor checked Layla vitals, reassured her, advised rest. Adrian arranged transportation and legal support quietly while Layla watched, realizing help was moving without demands. Nora ate breakfast, eyes bright again, then asked Adrian, will the smile man come back? Adrian answered no. And if someone else tries, they will find. Doors closed. Nora nodded, satisfied. Later in the day, Adrian received a call. Marco voice type, boss, the man was not acting alone. The pressure came through a shell firm linked to one of your rivals. They watched you choose the family. Adrian exhaled slow, then said, good. Marco hesitated. Boss, good. Adrian repeated. They expected fear or violence. They got restraint that confuses predators. Marco understood immediately. We have another problem, boss. The rival is landing tonight, same airport. Adrian eyes narrowed. Set the table. Marco asked quietly. What table? Adrian replied, the kind with cameras. By evening, Adrian returned to the airport, not hidden, not rushed. Layla and Nora stayed protected elsewhere, watched by trusted hands. Adrian walked the terminal openly. The rival arrived with entourage, smiles, flashes. Adrian waited by the arrival's sign. When they crossed paths, Adrian spoke first. Welcome back to the city. The rival laughed, surprised. Adrian continued, I heard you sponsor family values. The rival stiffened. Adrian leaned closer, still smiling. Stay away from Layla and Nora, or I will show you how public truth travels faster than threats. The rival scoffed. You would not. Adrian held his gaze and said, try me. Cameras watched, witnesses listened. The rival retreated, calculating. Adrian turned away, knowing the message landed. Power did not roar. It documented. Night settled again. Adrian visited Layla and Nora. Nora ran to him, hugging his leg without fear. Layla watched, surprised, touched. Adrian knelt and returned the hug gently, then stood. Layla whispered, I do not know how to repay you. Adrian replied, raise her free. Layla nodded, tears falling. He left quietly, knowing the shock everyone spoke about was not spectacle but choice. He had stood in an airport and changed a trajectory, not because he could but because a lost little girl asked a simple question and he answered it the right way. The city adjusted in subtle ways after that night. Routes shifted, meetings rescheduled, conversations grew careful. Adrian felt it like a pressure change before rain. He knew restraint unsettled men more than threats ever did. Layla and Nora stayed in a quiet apartment overlooking the river, guarded without uniforms, help delivered without signatures. Layla slept better each night. Nora laughed again, but Adrian noticed how she watched doors, counted steps, learned patterns. Safety had become a language she already spoke. Adrian visited in the evenings, not as a boss but as a presence that did not demand. Nora asked questions that cut through pretense. Why do people smile when they lie? Why do grown-ups pretend rules are walls when they are doors? Adrian answered honestly, because fear teaches shortcuts and shortcuts break people. Nora nodded, filing truths away. Layla watched them, wary, then grateful, then resolute. She met with the lawyer. Adrian provided a woman with steady eyes who spoke plainly. Restraining orders filed, evidence preserved, a custody motion reversed before it could take Root truth used as a tool, not a weapon. Meanwhile, Marco reported quiet movements, arrival testing boundaries, a few associates drifting away. Adrian let them go. The city breathed easier when knives stayed sheathed. One afternoon, Nora tugged Adrian's sleeve at a cafe by the water. Do you miss being scary? Adrian paused, then said, sometimes power is quiet. Nora smiled, then quiet is better. Adrian agreed. Later, a message arrived, not a threat, a request. A rival wanted a meeting. Adrian chose a public place, a museum hall full of light, cameras, witnesses, history. Watching, the rival spoke of balance, of old ways. Adrian spoke of limits. The rival tested lines. Adrian named consequences. Without heat, the meeting ended. Without deals, without blood, the city learned a lesson that day. Control could be exercised without crushing someone. To prove it, Layla called that night, voice steady. He tried again. Papers came to my job. Adrian replied, they will stop. Layla said, how do you know? Adrian answered, because pressure loses value when exposed. Nora took the phone and said, thank you for not being lost. Adrian smiled to himself. The next week brought a test, a staged incident meant to provoke Adrian into force. He declined, chose transparency instead. The instigators dissolved under scrutiny like smoke. The narrative shifted, whispers turned to caution. The city did not crown Adrian a saint, but it recalibrated its expectations. Men who thrived on chaos found fewer doors open. Layla signed a lease near a school. Nora liked the playground. Adrian attended the school meeting quietly, no entourage, no announcement. Nora squeezed his hand, then ran to the swings. Layla watched him, then said, you could have walked away. Adrian answered, then nothing would have changed. Layla nodded, understanding. At dusk, Adrian stood by the river alone, thinking of airports and questions, and Forks paused mid-air. He realized shock was not in spectacle, but in the refusal to be what others needed him to be. He had chosen to be present. The night ended with a message from Marco, Operation Stable City. Calm. Adrian replied, good. Then he put the phone away and walked home, knowing the final measure would not be applause or fear, but mornings that arrived quietly and stayed that way. The final test came without noise, without warning, the way real endings often do. Layla woke to sunlight and calm, not sirens, not calls. Nora dressed herself for school, humming a tune she learned on the swings. The river moved steady outside the window. Adrian arrived later than usual, carrying nothing but quiet. He sat at the table and watched Nora eat cereal, counting bites like a ritual. Layla sensed something different and asked, is it over? Adrian nodded yes. Layla searched his face for doubt and found none, only completion. He explained simply, the rival withdrew, the shell firm, dissolved, the pressure ended, because exposure is a blade that cuts deeper than force. Layla breathed out, years of fear leaving her shoulders. Nora looked up and asked, does that mean nobody is lost today? Adrian smiled faintly and said, today nobody is lost. They walked to the school together. The bell rang, children ran. Nora turned back, hugged Adrian without asking permission this time, then ran laughing. Layla stood beside him and said, you changed our lives. Adrian replied, you changed mine by reminding me what matters. Layla hesitated, then asked, what happens to you now? Adrian looked at the river and answered, I keep choosing the harder, quiet way. Layla nodded, knowing that choice carried weight. Adrian left without ceremony. The city accepted it without headlines. Days passed into weeks. The calm held. The museum meeting stayed public. The streets stayed quieter. The knives stayed sheathed. The airport became just an airport again, not a crossroads of fate. Adrian flew once more, sat with coffee untouched, watched families reunite, heard announcements echo, and felt no need to control the moment. He was not lost. Months later, Nora sent a drawing, a plane, a river, a tall man, a small girl holding hands. Layla wrote a note, school is good, peace is real. Thank you. Adrian placed the drawing in a drawer where he kept few things worth keeping. He understood then that shock was not in what he did next, but in what he refused to do. He refused the easy path. He refused the spectacle. He refused to let power answer a child's question with silence. The city adjusted again, quieter this time, learning that mercy could be durable, that safety could be built, not seized. And in the end, a lost little girl spoke at an airport, and a man who could have walked away chose to stay, and that choice echoed longer than any threat ever could. Thank you for staying with us through this story of courage, presence, and unexpected mercy. If Nora's question and Adrian's choice moved you, tell us in the comments where you are watching from, which country, which city. Your support helps us keep bringing powerful human stories to life. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing a powerful person can do is stop, listen, and choose the quiet right answer. See you in the next story.